Meet Zeke Draker. He was born into the Draker household, a family directly descended from legendary dragon slayers. However, his time to flex the family title was short-lived. He was soon abandoned because his family deemed him unfit. Apparently, his family wanted a swordsman, but Zeke turned out to be a cursed healer, someone no one cared about. In his pursuit of power, Zeke wandered across continents and eventually stumbled upon an ancient relic, a treasure even desired by the Emperor himself. But in the end, he was taken down by soldiers sent by the Emperor. The injuries inflicted were so severe that even his healing magic failed to assist him. Yet fate had other plans. The ancient relic he had stolen triggered an upgrade system that allowed him to regress to a younger age with these newly granted ancient powers awakened inside. And from this moment on, his real story begins at the Draker household's training institution, the Cradle. Before diving deeper into Zeke's story, it's important to understand the background of his family. The Draker family is one of the three great transcendent households. This renown stems from their ancestor, Tarakan Draker, the hero who saved the land 1,000 years ago by slaying the evil dragon Bahamut. It was Tarakan's victory that laid the foundation for the Draker household's prominence. Perhaps due to their lineage, every descendant of the Draker bloodline has inherited the blessing of aura, allowing them to awaken high-level aura effortlessly and excel as knights. That is, until Zeke came along. Unlike his ancestors, he was born without the ability to wield aura, a deviation that cast him as an outcast within his family. After regressing, as Zeke relaxes on his bed totally carefree, the system window suddenly startles him. He immediately goes on high alert, listening intently after hearing the unusual sound. However, after scanning the room and finding no one, he convinces himself he might have just imagined it. But then, a few more system windows chime in. Out of all the system windows, one particular system has the juiciest detail. It goes on to announce that Zeke's soul has received the will of the Elder Dragon, and it has been merged completely with his soul. Soon enough, Zeke is also granted authority over part of the system. And as soon as the activation is complete, his eyesight is swarmed by a plethora of system windows. The first window displays his overall stats, including his class, skills, and a unique skill category labeled Draconian Skill. This skill can only be unlocked once he accumulates 10 points, but his current karma points are 0. Curious, he begins fiddling with the system and quickly learns how to navigate and operate it. Among all the information displayed in the administration status window, what stands out to him the most is the class skill. The reason behind his curiosity is that this word, class skills, is a terminology from Draconic language that is not used in this current era. He has heard about this class skills from his master. According to his master, people of the ancient world classified themselves based on their strengths. Each class trained in specialized techniques referred to as skills. Since Zeke's class is that of a healer, his corresponding skill is called healing. After Zeke awakened, his master, who was female by the way, trained him relentlessly until he was on the brink of death. Her training methods were unusual, and he still remembers the unbearable pain she inflicted on him just so he could heal it back. In any case, Zeke decides to verify if he is indeed a healer, just as the system claims. As soon as he activates his powers, he realizes that he is, in fact, a healer. He's surprised because, in his past life, the time he became a healer was in his 20s, right after his ether hall was unlocked. Since he can't possibly access his healing ability without his ether hall being unlocked, it clearly means that his ether hall has already been opened. This news is as good as it can get. Not only has he returned to the past with all his memories intact, but his skills have also come along. And this just puts him in an even more advantageous position. As he decides to explore the system further to see what other surprises are in store, someone calls out his name and knocks on the door. Quickly, he scrambles to push the system windows aside before anyone can see. However, the impatient visitor barges into the room without even waiting for a response. The man who just entered is Zeke's exclusive servant, Decker. He's apparently here to check if his young master is prepared for the event ahead. Of course, Zeke has no clue what he's supposed to be prepared for. This ticks off this terrifying man, and he is clearly annoyed by how careless Zeke seems. To think that the young master forgot about this special day is just pissing this butler beyond belief. The poor guy, on the other hand, begins to tremble instinctively under Decker's intense gaze. Now that Zeke thinks about it, he recalls that, in his past life, he was always afraid of Decker. Even though his mind is that of a 32-year-old, his subconscious can't shake the fear instilled in this body. Right at that moment, one of the class skills activates, known as Composed Mind. Almost instantly, all of Zeke's trembling and any trace of fear that had been on his face fades away completely. Apparently, Composed Mind is a skill that ensures the user's mental state remains unaffected, no matter the situation, allowing them to maintain a calm and composed mind. Zeke finds it rather convenient that it can activate on its own. Meanwhile, the butler continues repeating himself, trying to remind his young master of the importance of the event ahead. However, Zeke doesn't respond immediately. After much insistence from the butler, Zeke finally starts paying attention and admits that he does remember. He clearly recalls the evaluation test, known as pancration. To understand what pancration is, a little context is needed. All Drakers go through a training system called the Cradle, starting when they're 7 years old. For 5 years, they undergo strict basic training. Every year, the instructors evaluate the incoming students through competitions in swordsmanship and combat, specifically pancration, a no-holds-barred combat with no rules. Opponents are typically chosen by the instructors, but on occasion, students may choose their own adversaries, provided both parties consent. Since there are no rules, injuries are common, and sometimes students don't make it out alive. But because this competition determines which class the students will be placed into within the academy, the children have no choice but to fight with all they have. The day of pancration finally arrives, and the students find themselves gathered in the amphitheater. At the center of it all stands the instructor, who reminds everyone that today is the day of pancration, and that it marks the final part of their evaluation. All the students eagerly affirm what the instructor has said, and seeing their enthusiasm, even the instructor is somewhat intrigued by the high spirits of the crowd. This man is actually the head instructor, Panmark, and without further delay, he decides to get things started. In the crowd, the students begin to notice Zeke standing among them. Some students find it laughable that Zeke is once again here after the humiliation he suffered last year. The duel between two students finally begins, and a student named Aaron ends it before it even starts, delivering a single uppercut that knocks his opponent out cold. But while the other students find the quick fight fascinating, Zeke isn't impressed at all. He remembers the time when he, too, used to be terrified of such fights when he was younger. But compared to what he went through in his past life, this is nothing. As Zeke yawns repeatedly while waiting for his turn, one particular student, Leon Conrad, is eagerly waiting for the moment to have a duel with our boy. Eventually, the time for Zeke's match arrives, and his opponent just so happens to be Leon. While my guy is rubbing his tired eyes, Leon throws a jab at him, instantly reminding the humiliation Zeke suffered the previous year. Well, of course, Zeke has not forgotten about it. He vividly recalls how he had begged Leon for forgiveness back then. Those memories are painful, but they're in the past now. Leon has always been Zeke's opponent every year. Our boy knows him all too well, how dirty of a player Leon is, and the kind of trash family he comes from. He is certain that the only reason he's facing Leon in this duel is because Leon pulled some strings behind the scenes to fix the match. Zeke would rather have a dog who bites rather than having a cousin like him. In Zeke's past life, he was never able to meet his 4 siblings of direct bloodline. But there were more than a dozen cousins, and many of them were more than willing to bully him. Suddenly, Leon calls out to Zeke once again, and just like before, he tries to humiliate him by reminding him of the miserable defeat he suffered the previous year. He further questions Zeke whether that level of humiliation wasn't enough to keep him away from participating in pancration altogether. While Leon continues to throw one verbal jab after another, Zeke remains as cool as a cucumber, and it's all thanks to his composed mind ability. Although Zeke is calm and collected, there's still a limit to his patience. He won't tolerate some insolent bug bad-mouthing him repeatedly without consequence. Well, our boy's response only serves to trigger this bastard even more. And this time, Leon even goes so far as to grab our boy by the head. But his foolish move only earns him a solid punch to the face that sends him flying away. This brutal punch was possible thanks to Zeke's skill, Critical Strike. The ability inflicts significant damage to the opponent, and has the added risk of being countered if the attack fails. Fortunately for Zeke, this punch landed perfectly, leaving no room for a counter. The bastard, on the other hand, is writhing in agony, with his hand covering his own face. Zeke, meanwhile, reflects on how he only meant to knock the guy out and had no intention of activating this ability. The instructor quickly rushes to tend to the injured brat while scolding our boy for attacking even before the match began. But my guy just stays nonchalant in his response and wonders aloud why they had to wait for someone's command to start the battle when they're already standing in the arena. You see, the one who strikes first has the advantage, so he didn't shy away from taking this opportunity. While he says this, he looks absolutely menacing, and the sheer amount of killer intent he's exuding is enough to leave the poor instructor trembling. Meanwhile, Leon just assures the instructor that everything is fair game and tells him to just let the battle begin. After all, if Leon steps back on a moment like this, it would be way too humiliating to bear. As soon as the instructor gives the signal, Leon recklessly charges at his opponent. But his reckless charge earns him a punch right to the face. As surprising as it is, the punch Zeke landed didn't hurt at all. Initially, Leon was quite afraid of taking a direct punch, remembering how painful the first one was, but realizing this punch didn't hurt him at all only fuels his foolish confidence. All he has to do, he thinks, is put his guard up, and Zeke won't be a threat at all. Leon quickly notices our boy using his left hand for a counterattack again, so he ducks down. In that critical moment, he takes advantage of Zeke's vulnerability and takes him into his grasp in order to push him over to the ground. But suddenly, Leon takes a hit so fast that even we couldn't see what happened, leaving him trembling like a leaf. Even the instructor on the sidelines is completely boggled, unable to wrap his mind around the fact that he just witnessed a 12-year-old kid pull that slick move. The moment Leon dodged Zeke's counter and tried to take him down, the instructor was certain Leon was going to win. However, Zeke punched Leon square in the chin and escaped his grasp. It's on Leon for letting his guard down, thinking he had Zeke right where he wanted him. But our boy, on the other hand, remained as cool as cucumber, despite the fact that his counter failed. The concentration and precision needed to inflict such exact and effective damage is a feat in itself. The instructor is actually wondering if this is really the Zeke Draker they thought they knew. The bratty bastard, however, is in shambles after taking that brutal punch. His brain is scrambled, and before he can even react, he takes another blow that causes him to trip. But he quickly steadies himself and retaliates with a punch of his own. At that critical moment, one of Zeke's class skills activates automatically, heightened sense, which temporarily enhances his perception. With this skill, Zeke can see the punch coming at him in 960 frames per second slow-mo, making dodging it a piece of cake. As soon as the punch zips past him, Zeke quickly grabs Leon's extended arm and slam dunks him hard onto the ground. And the impact was so brutal that it literally shattered the ground beneath. Another skill activates, known as Precise Stab, which helps Zeke target the Leon's weak points for critical damage. After pinning the bratty bastard to the ground, Zeke balls up his fist, ready to obliterate his face. Poor Leon begs him to stop, but my guy still goes through with it, landing the punch square on his face. The sheer brutality of the act leaves the instructor sweating his balls, along with the spectators watching in stunned silence. The final hit feels immensely satisfying, and after this little battle, beating the crap out of his bully, Zeke feels a sense of calm washing over him. He's glad that, thanks to this little show he pulled off, his other cousins will think twice before messing with him again. Not that it matters, though. If they dare say or do anything, he'll make sure to silence them for good. It seems that wasn't enough to instill fear in these incompetent bastards. One particular punk, too complacent for his own good, challenges our boy and picks him as his pancration opponent. This overconfident, cocky punk is Jaken Vardek, itching to make a statement, though he plans to let his blows do the talking. Well, Zeke doesn't mind at all. In fact, he's sure he'll get bored if Jaken comes alone, so he offers him the chance to bring a few other students along to make things more interesting. Our boy specifically calls out another student, Liam Stone, and suggests he join Jaken. Apparently, Liam is nothing more than Jaken's lackey. This suggestion feels like a slap in the face to Jaken. The very idea that he'd need someone's assistance to fight a brat like Zeke is a humiliation he just can't stomach. But Zeke keeps pushing his buttons, which only enrages this piece of flying trash even more. Jaken's seething now, eager to beat Zeke to a pulp. As both contestants stand in the arena, the instructor this time explicitly warns Zeke not to move before the command. Well, it seems like Jaken did bring his servant along after all, which only makes Zeke even happier. After all, in Zeke's past life, Liam had a reputation for being an exceptional fighter, even earning the title of Mercenary King. Back then, as Jaken's servant, Liam joined the cradle in the academy. However, being a distant relative, he was overlooked in education. He desperately begged to join higher education at Academy Valhalla, but ultimately ended up in the Knight Order of a small nation called Baranon. When Baranon eventually fell, Liam became a mercenary. In those chaotic times, the strong naturally drew followers. With his long tenure as a mercenary, Liam rose to prominence as a Red Knight, and eventually founded the Stone Mercenaries. He united the three largest mercenary groups, earning the title of Mercenary King. When the Empire hired the Stone Mercenaries, Liam entered the Continental Wars, where Zeke, along with the Northerners, faced him as a formidable foe. But this time, our boy is determined to carve out a very different future for himself. As soon as the instructor gives the signal, Jaken confidently lunges forward, delivering a punch with such force that it disturbs the air currents around him. But, not surprisingly, Zeke casually grabs and blocks the punch as if it were nothing. Jaken quickly flings our boy's hand away and retaliates with a kick of his own. But that kick ends up backfiring against this filthy bastard. As soon as his kick connects, Jaken feels an immense amount of pain, causing him to stumble. It turns out he hit Zeke's strong barrier, which was created around his elbow, and that caused serious damage to Jaken's leg. As Jaken looks at his injured leg, Zeke quickly lunges forward, balls up his fist with his skill activated, ready to throw it down. But poor Jaken quickly tries to protect himself, putting his hands over his face. Seems like Jaken miscalculated Zeke's moves a little, because our boy never intended to land a hit on his face. Instead, he tags the bastard right on his injured leg. After that sneaky move, He follows up with a punch to the ribs, one that's enough to make Ken gag up copious amounts of blood. The overconfident bastard is finally on the ground. Left with no pride or dignity, he angrily instructs his sidekick to kill our boy right away. The time has come for our boy to deal with Liam, and this bastard is exuding some serious killing vibes as he strides toward him. The most annoying thing about fighting Liam is his insane reach, which puts Zeke at a serious disadvantage if he lets Liam attack first. So my guy takes his stance and decides to take the lead, throwing a few blows of his own. Using another skill known as Slash, Zeke moves so fast that all anyone can see are silhouettes throwing a barrage of punches. The skill Slash allows him to launch a relentless flurry of attacks at the enemy, completely interfering with the enemy's sight. The guys watching from the sidelines are feeling true despair, witnessing just how much of a gigachad our boy is. Zeke knows they're curious and confused because none of them have seen anything like this before. You see, in a place where sword dominates, seeing a brawler's fist-fighting technique is a rare and almost unheard of sight. As impressive as this ability is, it's also taking an equally heavy toll on his body. But even that isn't the biggest challenge here. The monstrous physique of Liam is what truly tests Zeke. No counterattacks, no dodges. Liam is just taking it all with his guard up, and now you can only imagine how aggressive he was during his time as the mercenary king. Since Zeke is unable to do any real damage, he prepares to unleash one final devastating strike, one that will be powerful enough to break through Liam's guard. As soon as our boy launches his strike, Liam effortlessly dodges it by redirecting it. What pisses Zeke off even more is that this bastard didn't even flinch or turn his eyes to see the strike, and he just dodged it like it was nothing. In the next moment, Liam seizes the opportunity to make his move. Lifting Zeke high into the air, he prepares to slam him hard onto the ground. But Zeke isn't about to let that happen without a fight. He quickly strikes Liam over the head. His class skill, Heightened Sense, activates, and with it, he completely turns the tide. Using this advantage, he locks Liam in a deadly neck hold with his legs, cutting off Liam's air supply. No matter how strong Liam's body is, he's still powerless without oxygen reaching his brain. However, it seems Zeke overestimated himself. Liam retaliates brutally, landing one devastating blow after another. The relentless flurry of punches even forces the poor guy to gag up blood. But despite the barrage of hits, Liam's body finally begins to falter. His strength wanes, and eventually, he succumbs, losing consciousness due to the lack of air. The spectators are left in awe, their breaths caught in their throats at the sight of such a jaw-dropping battle. But among them, there's one particular student who, instead of feeling worried or shaken, seems oddly exhilarated. He's actually excited and can't wait to take on Zeke as his opponent. After the day of pancration was over, our boy returns into his quarters, where his servant inquires about his well-being. He has heard that Zeke was gravely injured during the matches. To this, Zeke just shrugs it off, claiming he's perfectly fine. However, the butler does not relent, and insists on checking his pulse to verify that everything is truly okay. Zeke can tell that this old coot just wants to check whether he has awakened his aura or not. Eventually, he extends his hand toward the servant, who quickly shoots a blue energy through his hand and into Zeke's. Seeing this blue energy makes our boy pause and wonder if his servant might actually be a blue knight. You see, when checking if someone has awakened, most people simply examine their dantian. But this man is being unusually thorough with it. Imbuing someone else with aura is difficult enough on its own. But for this old man to control it so precisely like this, he must be a blue knight. Apparently not all knights are the same. They are classified according to their martial prowess and aura manipulation proficiency. White swordsman is the novice level, and most children before the blessing rite are white swordsmen. A yellow swordsman is the level you attain once you've awakened your aura and opened your dantian. All trainees of the cradle become yellow swordsmen after the blessing rite. Once you've learned to freely control aura, you earn the title of knight. The purple knight level is when you can reinforce your sword with aura, while the blue knight level is achieved when you can manifest an aura blade. Beyond this, the realm of those who have transcended their limits, the realm the mercenary king Liam and our boy had reached before his regression, is known as the Red Knight. Then there's the Black Knight. But only a few of these monsters exist across the entire continent. With that in mind, Zeke can't help but wonder how someone as skilled as his servant, who is clearly talented enough to be a commander, ended up acting as his babysitter. Still, no matter what, Zeke is sure there's no way this guy can detect his ether, something only 2 people in the entire world can use. Finally, the old man finishes his examination. With a firm tone, he questions his young master, asking if he might be hiding something. Of course, Zeke plays it cool and feigns ignorance. He counters by asking if the butler perhaps knows something that even he doesn't. A moment of silence fills the room, but it's quickly broken by our boy, who just drops the conversation by claiming that he was just joking. The butler then hesitates but can't help himself and questions Zeke about how drastically he has changed. This makes our boy to halt his movements. He turns around with a glare in his eyes. The question his butler asked is entirely wrong. Instead of asking why Zeke has changed now, the butler should have been asking why it took so long for Zeke to change. He then informs his butler that many more surprises are yet to come, so there's no need for the servant to be shocked repeatedly. All he has to do is follow the commands. The humble servant acknowledges his master's words and bows his head in submission, ready to follow without question. The butler then reports that the training room Zeke had requested is already prepared and waiting for him. Zeke is pleased with the report and dismisses the old man to get some well-deserved rest. As our boy walks off alone, he has a nagging fear that his butler might have been ordered to keep an eye on him. To counter this, he decides it's best to keep the butler close, so he can manipulate the old coot and extract the information he needs. Zeke still has to figure out who ordered his butler to watch him. He's pretty sure that no one from his mother's side would dare do it, which only leaves his siblings. Once Zeke enters the personal training room, he's immediately struck by how lavish the place is, which only confirms that this household truly lives up to its name. Before starting his training, he decides to check the system. With a command, the system panel pops up in front of him. There, he notices that his slash skill has reached proficiency. He has no clue how it happened, but he makes a wild guess that it probably leveled up from using it repeatedly. The skill is naturally activated based on his actions, and he doesn't need to do anything in particular to activate it. From what he can understand, if he learns something new, it will likely be added here as a skill as well. He's still unsure about the difference between a skill and a class skill, though he does notice that they both activate similarly on their own. Lastly, there's the Draconian skill, but he can't view it yet because it requires 10 points to unlock. He presses on the option, and the next system window informs him that he can earn karma points by killing monsters. His current karma points stand at 0. Speaking of monsters, Zeke reflects on how there are plenty of them in the dungeons, but he needs to be at least a purple knight to gain access. For now, though, he's more curious about why he regressed to the past and what this system is all about. The concepts of skills and class skills are also something in his curiosity list. At the back of his mind, he has a nagging feeling that all of this might be connected to that ancient relic. However, he can't be certain since he doesn't have enough information to piece everything together. Whatever the case, he grabs his sword and decides to use everything at his disposal to grow stronger, whether it's the system or the Draker lineage. In this world, there are two known powers, the aura of the knights and the mana of the mages. Knights reinforce their aura in the dungeons, while mages refine their mana through circles. The two powers are at opposite ends of the spectrum, meaning if one has awakened one power, they cannot awaken the other. However, Zeke was unfortunate enough to awaken neither a Dantian nor a circle. This inability led to his abandonment by the Draker household, forcing him to wander aimlessly until he met his master during his vagabond days. His master taught him many things, but the most valuable lessons were the art of healing and the Ether Hall, a unique technique his master had developed. Through the Ether Hall, Zeke learned to harness the energy of nature, known as ether. To this day, he and his master remain the only ether users in the world. After only 2 hours of training, Zeke feels as though he's about to collapse. However, his class skill healing activates in tandem with another class skill, Vigor Recovery. Healing is an exceptionally rare skill, one Zeke hadn't even known existed before meeting his master. If others were to witness him using it, they'd brand him an irregular. That's why he refrained from using it during his fight against Liam, and had to rush to heal himself the moment he returned to his room. After his body recovers to full strength, Zeke decides to continue practicing. He knows he cannot afford to waste even a moment. By dawn, Zeke looks utterly exhausted after relentless training. The entire hall bears the evidence of his efforts, with deep gashes scarring the floor and trails marking where his sword struck. Anyhow, a week passes by and we find ourselves in Cradle Cafeteria. There, Zeke overhears some students talking about him. They think he's turned into a completely different person now. Since he is a born loser, they assume he might have dabbled in black magic. Meanwhile, in another private lounge, all the big shot students are having dinner together. The first one chowing down on steak is Raina Tarun. Then there's this guy, Owen Zimmons, calm and composed. And across from him sits a beaten-up Leon, looking as rowdy and impatient as ever. Owen tries to tell him he should eat properly because he'll need the energy for the swordsmanship duel. Leon, on the other hand, gets ticked off for no apparent reason, and smashes his hand so hard on the table in frustration that the juicy steak he was served unnecessarily falls to the ground. Because of this table slam, even Raina's piece of steak jumps off her plate and falls, leaving her totally enraged. Her intense glare finally humbles Leon a little. Apparently all 4 of these students seem to hate our boy, so it's not surprising they're together. But even though they're in the same group, they don't seem to get along all that well. The only thing keeping their relationship intact is their shared resentment for Zeke. Owen admits that Zeke was both brave and impressive during the pancration. However, he's convinced he will be pathetic when it comes to swordsmanship. As far as he knows, Zeke doesn't even know how to hold a sword properly, so he's no threat to anyone. One of them points out that Zeke is so weak he had to get a customized sword because the basic ones were too heavy for him. Still, it doesn't make sense to Leon that he lost to that inferior piece of shit. He's convinced Zeke only won against him in Pancration because of pure luck. Well, it looks like Reina doesn't share the same thoughts. If they actually believe this nonsense, then none of them have the right to be knights of the Draker household. With those words, the lady leaves the room. Before we jump to the day of the duel, here is a little context about what this sword duel is all about. Unlike Pancration, sword duels involve real swords, making them the primary cause of most incidents within Cradle. It's also where the difference between cadets' skills becomes glaringly obvious. A month after the current final exams, the Blessing Rite will commence, the event where the Drakers awaken their aura. The day of the duel has finally arrived, and the instructor commands Zeke to come up next. My guy casually walks onto the scene with a giant sword resting over his shoulder. The sword is literally bigger than him, which certainly doesn't go unnoticed. Everyone finds it hilarious, thinking Zeke believes that the bigger is better, so it will somehow give him an advantage. The person stepping up from the other side is Reina, who looks absolutely fired up and dramatically throws down the gauntlet to challenge our boy to a duel. Well, my guy is more than ready to take on this challenge and accepts it without a second thought. It doesn't sit well with Reina to see Zeke effortlessly lifting a claymore. Now that she's facing him in person, she can tell this isn't the same Zeke she once knew. The person she knew once could barely hold a sword properly. His presence is so striking that she begins to feel intimidated. But she quickly snaps out of it, disgusted with herself for even thinking that she could be intimidated by him. Backing down isn't an option now, especially since she was the one who issued the challenge. Meanwhile, Zeke is also feeling quite intimidated. He knows his usual tactics won't be enough to get the victory he wants, because a duel against the Lightning Knight is no joke. It's downright nerve-wracking. You see, Reina Taron was well-renowned and had earned the title of the Lightning Knight in his past life. She made a name for herself during the Continental Wars, and is recognized as one of the greatest of the next generation of Drakers. She's one of the rare few who awakened her aura even before undergoing the Blessing Rite. As far as Zeke remembers, she must have awakened her aura a few years ago. However, she hasn't used it in Cradle because she's been focusing on improving her fundamentals. As soon as the signal to commence the duel is given, both contestants clash their swords right away. After the first clash, Reina steps back before charging at him again. With one strike, she sets Zeke sliding backward. Just these two exchanged blows were enough for our boy to draw the judgment that she's even better than he expected. The feisty lady charges at him once more, swinging her sword as fast as she can, lighting up the area with sparks. In the background, her friends are getting restless and impatient, urging her to just finish him off in one strike instead of playing around. But one of the wiser ones reminds these idiots that Reina isn't toying with him. It's Zeke who is pushing her around. Now, switching to her perspective, she can clearly see the openings and vulnerabilities in Zeke's guard. Yet, every time she tries to exploit them, her sword is quickly blocked by his sword, almost as if he's applauding her attempts. What's even more frustrating is that after he blocks one attack, he intentionally leaves another vulnerable point for her to strike. It's as if this duel isn't about winning. It's meant to teach her. After a few exchanges, Reina finally steps back, utterly exhausted by the back and forth. She wants to catch her breath before coming back for more. Meanwhile, Zeke doesn't have a single ounce of sweat or tiredness on his face. In fact, he looks bored. He's not that impressed. She is fighting honestly without using any aura, but it's expected from someone obsessed with their fundamentals. Now that they are at it, he decides to help her break out of her shell. He intentionally takes an extremely low stance, as if he intends to close the gap in one move. Reina is confident in her speed and doesn't think much of it. But in the blink of an eye, Zeke closes the gap and is right in her face before she even has time to react. He swings his sword so hard that it literally cracks the ground with the force of his giant blade. The girl, on the other hand, is sure that as long as there's distance between them, she can react to his moves. Zeke swings his sword through empty air, but it wasn't meant to hit her. Instead, the debris he flung into the air with the force of his swing strikes her square in the face, leaving her nose pretty banged up. Next, Zeke charges at her with his massive sword in hand. As she sees that shiny blade only a few centimeters away from her neck, she's sure she's done for. But as surprising as it is, the sword Zeke was holding suddenly goes flying into the air and lands a few feet away. With that, the crowd quickly declares Zeke the loser, while showering Reina with praise for winning without even using her aura. However, the instructor knows this isn't what it seems, and his face is painted with sheer horror, as if he just found out he has more than one father. What the cadets didn't notice was that as Zeke's attack closed in on Reina, she used the faintest amount of aura, so subtle it was barely noticeable. The fact that Zeke forced her to use her aura, despite her vow not to until she entered the academy, is nothing short of insane. As Reina stands there, her face riddled with doubt and regret for breaking her promise, Zeke suddenly charges at her. With his fist balled up, he strikes her square in the throat, reminding her that this isn't over yet. She buckles over her knees with blood leaking from her mouth. The other coward sitting in the cavea is outraged because this was supposed to be a sword duel, so they won't stand for such cheap attacks. Everyone present points their fingers at Zeke out of contempt, calling him shameless for pulling off such a move. Meanwhile, Zeke remains completely unbothered by all the noise and insults. He calmly asks Reina if she wants to continue. Reina, on the other hand, stubbornly believes she hasn't lost yet, reasoning that he only struck her because she let her guard down. But as she thinks about it, a realization hits her. If he had been holding a knife instead of throwing a barehanded punch, she would already be 6 feet under. For that reason alone, she honorably concedes defeat. The crowd, which had been eagerly mocking Zeke moments ago, falls into stunned silence. Zeke Draker, who was labeled human scum just days ago, has achieved an undeniable victory against one of the most talented children of the famed houses. The fact that Reina Tarun, the Lightning Knight, was defeated is simply unfathomable to most of those present. The scene transitions to Abel's castle. Outside, a dangerous battle has just ended, leaving behind a trail of bodies in the pit. William witnesses the horrific scene and fails to understand how Abel is calmly drinking tea without any worries. Abel's current focus is on a letter that mentions Zeke Draker's victory over Reina, the prodigy. He gets up and asks about how long they have until the blessing rite comes around. Since they've got enough time until the full moon, Abel believes it's fitting to pay the Draker family a visit. Hearing this, William is rather shocked that he's choosing to go by himself. But to this swordmaster, he's itching to know the kind of awakening the youngest of their family is going through. While Zeke's victory left the rest of the cradle stunned, he didn't care much about his achievement and merely resumed his training, refusing to celebrate. 1 month passed, and the day of the blessing rite finally arrived. Zeke still doesn't comprehend how he managed to become a Red Knight in his original life, especially with the shitty body he has. Having finished training, he commands open the status window. His mastery skill is according to his expectations, standing at the expert level. What's even better is that every time a skill ranks up, its mastery level resets, as evident by his numerous skill tiers in rank D and E. Also, he's advanced his mastery with Swift Step skill, the same one he used against Reina. Thanks to his sharp senses, he can tell the butler is watching him. Decker informs his master that they're to leave in 2 hours for the event. Zeke thinks it's time to get ready. Zeke hasn't visited the main estate in a long time. He's on his way to the Draker family's house situated in the Duchy of Troy. While the family's main residence is located in the center of the continent, the blessing rite is held where the legend of the Dragon Slayer surfaced. Having arrived at his destination, Zeke steps outside the carriage and into the Dragon's Nest lair. Having made his way inside, he has an enlightening realization. The people here are VIPs with incredible fame. He knows for a face that some of them are informants sent to observe him. Despite their intentions, Zeke thinks everything will go swimmingly well once his awakening blows up in their faces. That is until he spots a certain man, a man whose very presence makes his blood boil. That man is none other than Abel, who shakes hands with someone and expresses that he had no interest in coming to the event. None except for one person, and that person is his youngest brother. The second son of the Draker family is nicknamed the Lion Blade, but he's got an even more prominent name that Zeke knows by heart: the Butchering Knight. Our boy does his best to maintain his calm facing his elder brother. After all, he doesn't have many options in this situation. In his previous life, the second son never showed up to observe Zeke in the blessing rite. This means his actions in the pancration competition have altered the trajectory of the future. Clenching his fist in frustration, Zeke realizes that he's acquired a chance for himself. Before long, the blessing rite is underway. Aaron is told to come out as the first warrior. He promptly places his arm inside a mystical pool, causing his arm to surge with a blue essence. It's explained that during every blessing rite ritual, each member of the Draker bloodline awakens their sealed aura right around the time they're supposed to graduate from the cradle. This happens at the age of 12. And Aaron has just become an example of the first to be awakened. Now, compared to regular knights who awaken after 20 years of age, this process is extremely fast for the Draker family. Only a few exceptional cases among them, those with aura, can also awaken a particular trait of the Dragon Slayer. This trait is called mana inhibition. Interestingly, the mana lamps are reacting harshly and with sparks of red. Those who end up obtaining mana inhibition end up strong enough to rival the likes of red and black knights. This is called pure blood awakening. Due to the mana inhibition trait, the candidates will require usage of special gloves made by the family, because otherwise, they'll never be able to enjoy a regular life. This example is shown with Reina, who has already undergone the awakening process and wears gloves consistently. After one has been able to prove that they're pure blood, they are granted the Draker name. And then, they are also provided with a wealth of support along with endless benefits to help them. The spectators murmur as finally, the most anticipated awakening candidate steps up to the scene. They all think that this child's awakening will surpass even that of Reina's. As Zeke steps in front of the statue, he finds himself surprised that he's found himself here again. The previous experience was traumatizing in his old life. While the blessing rite was the only thing that helped him advance through the cradle, this was the day he earned nothing but embarrassment. However, reality is now different. He possesses the ability to heal, manipulate ether, and on top of everything, he has learned to be tenacious and strong with his own abilities. That's why he's expecting a lot from the bronze statue to do him a favor here. As he dips his arm inside the pool, the statue reacts. It shakes before coming to an abrupt stop, shocking everyone in the room. It's something that has never happened to any candidate before, and it has left even Abel speechless. As he takes out his arm, the boy confirms his thoughts. He knew things wouldn't be different this time around. It's because of Abel that he jumped to conclusions and became too confident. The rest of the people are just shocked that the most anticipated candidate failed to awaken. They make fun of him for not awakening despite being a direct descendant. Then there's the question of him beating Reina, which everyone now believes must have been through a sneaky trick or something. Still, our boy has zero fucks to spare and instead focuses on becoming stronger via other awakenings. The system greets him with a sudden apology after experiencing an error. Zeke looks perplexed as the system informs him that necessary information is missing from his class identification. This part of the message captures his attention. The system tells him that the input is complete, and that the terminal has identified the user's talent as a healer. With that, he unlocked his class and simultaneously gained access to the rare class. Zeke can't believe his eyes as the statue begins to illuminate red lights, indicating a pureblood's awakening. No one can believe that he's starting as a red knight off the bat. The system connects and unlocks the ancient dragon's blessing from within Zeke's soul. While this is happening, Abel is calmly observing his brother. The talent of kin is the first thing that is awakened, and then his already awakened talents combine together, morphing together into a new class of its own. There is so much going on that Zeke doesn't understand, especially when he sees a new unique class called the Immortal, which the system has chosen for him. The shimmer of gold light surrounding his body attracts the attention of the spectators. They're certain to have seen the red light from the statue, but they're filled with doubts. Zeke has understood the situation perfectly and thinks it's pointless to speak against them right now. They question if the statue is broken, but then how would one explain the mana lamp reacting to the reading? There wasn't any mana inhibition, so it can't be a pure blood's awakening is what they want to believe. That's when Abel begins to applaud, mocking the people for failing to congratulate the newly awakened purebloods in a single go. He thinks this is an opportunity to celebrate the occasion instead of murmuring doubts. Since they can't speak against him, they give them a round of applause. Abel demands a pair of gloves to be prepared for his young brother. Zeke receives the gloves but has a low opinion of them. He walks away while Abel is satisfied with what he sees. As for our boy, he's pissed that he received Abel's help from all the people. The blessing rite soon comes to an end, and a celebration party for everyone to enjoy is next. Zeke is on his Sigma male grind set and doesn't want to show up to the party. He comes to a sudden stop after a voice calls his name. This is completely against Zeke's expectations, as he wasn't expecting Abel to pop out of nowhere. He wants to know where the kid is going, and even congratulates him with a handshake. Despite hating his older brother, declining his handshake here would put him in trouble, so he acts all nice and reaches to shake his hand. That's until he remembers a bloodbath from the memories of his previous life. For some reason, Zeke retracts his hand and refuses to say a word. Abel reveals a hint of his malicious nature, blaming his little brother for the awkward situation. In his thoughts, Zeke simply can't accept shaking the hand of a man he deems the most disgusting and despicable. Abel doesn't really care much and waves him goodbye. He's expecting to meet him later and walks away without bothering him much. To his words, Zeke confirms that he is also determined to meet his brother one day. Fast forwarding to the party, where many are busy discussing the recent awakening of the two purebloods. No one has yet to figure out what Zeke's golden light implies, as it has never happened before. They wonder about his location as he's nowhere to be seen. We do catch a glimpse of Zeke, but he's unwinding in a different room, having barely survived the suffocating social event. Also, he still can't place how he's the only one unaffected. The thing about pureblood awakenings is that they have mana inhibition as a trait. It's supposed to showcase that the Draker family is against dragons, who are known for being the source of mana. Be that as it may, most machines require mana as their necessary fuel. The fact is, a pureblood needs the use of special gloves for the cause. If Zeke is supposed to be a pureblood awakener, then he should have faced problems the moment he took his gloves off. But right now he seems unaffected. This causes him to pop open the status window, which is different in its properties from before. Instead of having mana inhibition, he possesses a unique trait called mana reflection. An intrigued Zeke decides to read deeper into the details of the skill. There he discovers that mana reflection creates a distortion field that is responsible for nullifying nearby mana. It's classified as a skill and doesn't react to the mana lamps as it's not passive in effect. He was identified as a rare class healer before the blessing rite, but now he's considered a unique immortal, which he doesn't understand. Confusion sets in as all of the graduates of the ceremony achieve blue aura with typical awakenings. The only person who was an exception to the case was Reina, who received a red pureblood awakening. The same case goes for our boy, but then it eventually transitioned into gold. The system told him that it was missing critical information regarding the classification. Zeke wonders if it was considering the bronze statue as its classification terminal during the awakening. The moment the system injected the necessary information inside the terminal, the statue reacted strongly and emitted a red light. Everything is starting to fall into place now. Zeke believes that the statue isn't there to determine if one has awakened or not. Rather, it's supposed to judge their class. Red implies a rare class and gold implies a unique class. Furthermore, the statue is a relic that has been here even before Tarakan's time, the man who founded the Draker family. Class identification doesn't really exist as a concept nowadays, which is why the statue's singular purpose is to distinguish the awakened from those who are not. They have misinterpreted the purpose of the red light as a kind of pureblood awakening, when in reality it means that they've achieved rare class. What's really fascinating is that not even the clan family's head is yet to know about this. Interestingly, Zeke finds that he's acquired 100 karma points to his name. He wonders if he received them during the ceremony and quickly decides to put them to use by purchasing the draconian skill. The system updates with an influx of information after the purchase. He has acquired a whole bunch of beginner skills like Dragon Eyes, Might of the Dragon, and Devour. The first two make total sense to him, but the last one does not, as its only purpose is to help with digestion. The dude really doesn't want to invest his points into something he's uncertain about, so he goes for the Dragon Eyes and Might of the Dragon instead. The second skill is riskier to use as it involves the use of aura, so for now he activates Dragon Eyes to see what's so special. It's a little undermining because Zeke doesn't perceive anything noteworthy or new to his senses in his surroundings. That's until he opens the window to stare at the statue in the garden. The skill amps up his magnification, allowing him to view farther objects from up close. Also, he's granted the ability to view detailed information about the object he's viewing. All kinds of properties regarding the statue's build flood his body with information. It takes a toll on his body and he feels extremely exhausted after using the power. Zeke thinks his powers will be sparingly useful if they have such a heavy drawback. Thankfully, his healing factor kicks in, fixing his exhaustion. What's surprising is that Zeke didn't even input the intention to heal. It just kicked in automatically. Inspecting the system screen, he realizes that all of his class skills have converted into passive abilities, and even jumped up a level. The healing factor allows him to repair his body without triggering the activation. It's an excellent version of his previous skill. While it seems like healing is way too OP, it's not something you can consistently spam. Otherwise, he wouldn't have died in the first place. At the same time, the healing factor is infinite in nature. In order to test his evolved skill, he takes a blade and gives his arm a slight cut. Seconds after the injury, the healing factor automatically kicks in, healing the cut without leaving any marks. The usual time to graduate from the academy is 5 years, but a confident Zeke thinks he'll be able to get it done in 2 years. The Draker Academy is the greatest knight academy ever known. Any aspiring knight would sell anything to take their spot inside. Located in the Duchy of Troy, the academy thrives with the spring life each time a new semester comes around. As Zeke walks among the others, he notes how the higher-ranked students are comparably no different from adults. They're just as capable, and if he were to compare these guys to the cradle, then they're nothing more than children from great families. Zeke thinks his entire family is messed up. Among the thriving branch families supporting the Draker family, 3 families are the most prominent and have the influence to be called the Great Families. The first is the Tarun of Strength, which Reina is a part of. The second family is Zimmons of Wisdom. And lastly, there's the Vardek family of Gold. The children of those 3 families are here, but Zeke couldn't spare a second thought for them. The scene cuts to the high-class dormitory of the Platinum Mansion. This high-class dormitory boasts a training hall, an exquisite library, and all kinds of premium facilities. The best of the best students are supposed to enjoy the luxuries. As for the pureblood awakeners, they're granted an additional privilege of floor master. This floor is known as the Platinum Floor. A maid greets our boy's arrival, and he's soon escorted to his assigned floor, where others are waiting. Arriving here, Zeke is a little exhausted to find so many people, despite him being awakened as a pureblood. He's told that Decker is waiting for him in another room. Without wasting time, Zeke goes to meet him to see what's up. The butler has something to show to his master. He surprises him with a premium pair of gloves that he initially received upon awakening. He's already acquired new gloves, but Zeke's got his eye set on a new sword now too. He picks his blade, which the butler supports without concern. The Duchy of Troy is known to be close to the mountain ranges. That's why it's got an abundance of good iron and skilled craftsmen, who prove to be an irreplaceable source of strength for the alumni. Decker wants to search for a craftsman for the young master, but Zeke is fine handling it himself. He wants to see them in person, and requests Decker to set an appointment in advance. The name Galleon Halbert is someone not even Butler has heard of before. He intends to contact this man for an appointment soon. At the same time, he reminds Zeke to review the documents before his first class begins tomorrow. Later that day, Zeke is busy reviewing the notes when he comes up with an interesting observation. The platinum floor is reserved for him, so he could test out his new draconian skills and help them develop. A maid comes to inform the young master that Reina has sent a dinner invitation to him. Zeke is surprised upon hearing this and decides to pay a visit. He comes around to her floor and finds himself a little stumped because Reina is out here playing Al Capone or something. She welcomes him and apologizes for the unique dinner setting. Zeke doesn't mind and takes his seat. They first decide to eat and then talk. Observing her from across the table, Zeke can tell that she's utilizing the aura in her lower abdomen even in a setting like this. He wonders if she's set her sights on becoming a purple knight, which might explain why her sword skills have reached their limit. It's a waste of good potential in his eyes. Finished with dinner, Zeke is exhausted and surprised that she ate way more than him. With their appetites satisfied, she wants to get to the meat of the situation. Reina offers him full support of the Tarun family. Zeke thinks this is some sort of misunderstanding and reminds her that they're both pure-blood awakeners. She fires back by claiming that he's the one who's wrong. As pure-bloods, they do have a bunch of privileges to enjoy, with the platinum floor included in that bundle. However, they also don't receive benefits in terms of growth. Centuries of academic and practical knowledge is reserved in this brilliant academy. Then there are personal instructors to guide you and evolve your abilities. If someone doesn't have either of these things, they'll definitely lag behind. Reina strongly argues that the support families are critical. She exemplifies Abel Draker, a man who is also a pure blood of the family and the youngest to ever attain the title of a White Knight. At his current level, he's one of the strongest Black Knights, and even he received support from the Zimmons family. While the patriarch of the Tarun family has yet to explain why, his orders are absolute that he wants to extend the Tarun's family's support to Zeke Draker. Reina reiterates her point, but our boy is in the mood to fuck around with her feelings and calmly says no. This causes her to experience a shock as she just can't fathom how it's a bad deal for him. Getting up from his seat, Zeke turns to leave, claiming that he's actually uninterested in anything like that apart from being a pure-blood awakener. To pay her back for the meal, he has one personal piece of advice to share. Zeke shares that her sword is much too powerful, and he figures that it has to be related to those men behind her. Zeke offers that her greatest strength results from her flexibility of her adaptable body. He advises against attacking her opponents head-on. Instead, she should use her fluid movements to calmly redirect her opponents to land a precise, single attack. Zeke thinks that if she's capable of doing that, she'll inevitably grow much stronger than she already is. Saying that, he parts ways, leaving her frustrated. She wanted to utilize her family's tradition of strength, which is what she's been doing up until now. Still, Reina can't deny a part of what he just said. She has been endlessly trying to become worthy of her family's name, which influenced her sword style quite a bit. Zeke was able to catch that. While Reina was young and praised as a genius prodigy, no one offered her any advice. This interaction with him has left her to reevaluate her opinion of Zeke Draker as a person. Skipping ahead to Zeke's monologue, he's reflecting just how powerful he's gotten with his new skills. After all, even an entire night's worth of training couldn't stop him just now. The dude literally has infinite stamina now. He's gonna last longer in bed than the age of the universe. In his previous life, this place was nothing more than hell for him. But with his newly awakened state, it's actually pretty chill now. Zeke is enjoying the peace that can't be bought with money or power. As he's minding his own business, the representative of the Zimmons family approaches him. Owen is the third son of the family, and he's an expert in manipulation. He blackmailed and bullied our boy in his previous life. Interestingly, he also invited Zeke to a dinner invitation only to get rejected in the face. Surprisingly, Owen is acting way too friendly in this life. Zeke realizes what invitation letter he's referring to and releases a snarky remark. Owen questions why he refused to reply, only for Zeke to coldly respond that he doesn't have to give a damn about the fucker's messages. His rude remark just now captures Owen's friend's full attention, who thinks the boy is being overly blunt to a polite invitation. Zeke pulls a "who the fuck are you" card, and really couldn't be bothered about knowing him. So he leaves, realizing that this show-off just wants to suck Owen's dick by appearing strong. Shockingly, this bastard has the gall to attack Zeke unannounced. He managed to block the attack despite it being covered in aura manipulation. Durbin Roswell roars his name and claims that he's the mightiest of them all. Yeah, the mightiest refrigerator maybe. The youngest Draker simply laughs at his little speech, as this man isn't even a knight and barely even a cadet. Zeke lunges forth with his lightning-fast speed, smashing this guy's abdomen with a hook that could rival Mike Tyson's. It knocks the fuckface into the ground, while Zeke happily invites the next person from the Simmons family to come and catch some smoke. Owen draws near him and states that he's unimpressed by Zeke's goading of his own strength. The group leaves Zeke to himself, who thinks of them nothing more than a circus crew. Let's explore the intricacies of the Draker Academy for a second. It's split into two classes. The first is the normal class, where one is taught if they're lacking talent. That class is overcome with effort and a disciplined regimen. The second class is the special class, where certain cadets can choose their subjects outside of the basic subjects. In this academy, the top dogs and the elites gather in the special class, which is also why Zeke had his personal expectations of who'd end up here. But none of them seem noteworthy, and they're just the alumni from the cradle whom he already knows. He even jokes around that it's not a special class but rather a cradle class. Class is in session, and the instructor at the podium is pleased to introduce someone very special today. This mysterious person was once the commander-in-chief of the Empire 2 decades ago, and the same person responsible for blocking the Empire's invasion with their impeccable strategy. Dean Howard Draker is welcomed in good hearts, the man who runs the show for this academy. Known as the war hero, Howard is worshipped as a symbol of hope and praised as a standard for tactical war. But in reality, the truth is far darker than his fame implies. The information he coincidentally leaked to the enemy for his personal survival helped him luck out of the situation. In short, he's a lucky sellout who survived to relish the glory. Zeke deeply despises him and claims that he's the perpetrator responsible for getting him kicked from the academy the first time around. With nowhere left to go, Zeke wandered aimlessly and lost in the Duchy of Troy. There he was caught by the slave traders and ended up sold to the Southern Cartel. The very existence of this man is rooted in a traumatic memory for our protagonist, and you best be damned he's going to get his revenge on this fat geezer someday. The dean's speech comes to a close and the teacher takes over to begin their classes. The cadets are instructed to head to the arena at once for some indoor training. Inside the training arena, Zeke is baffled that he has to sit through the basics of dragon slaying. After all, in his past life, he couldn't wield aura and wasted 2 whole years when normally it takes the average person 3 months to do it. The instructor welcomes the students, introducing himself as the Rose Knight, Andre Draker. He's in charge of teaching them the basics of dragon slaying. The students are a little underwhelmed because they don't know anything about this guy. The name strikes Zeke's memory. He recalls that Andre isn't a pure-blood awakener who still managed to graduate quickly from the academy, and was praised as a valedictorian from Valhalla. He isn't even from the family, but his talent is simply so remarkable that he earned the Draker family's name. This man is the guy your girl tells you not to worry about. Zeke admits that the special classes teachers all vary in levels, but this dude is notorious for his shitty personality. Andre shows them a demonstration by telling them to keep quiet so he can start the class. He has the cadets drawing their swords, preparing for the training. His eye catches Zeke's special sword, which is enormous compared to the others. Zeke doesn't have any trouble demonstrating just how easy it is to wave around for him. Andre's resting bitch face commands him to step foot in the arena. He thinks the boy is being overconfident by picking a sword unfit for his body. Of course, this is just typical teacher talk, and Zeke wanted this to happen, hence his choice to pick the sword. He arrogantly boasts that he could defeat the instructor with the same weapon. It's quite the provocation that shakes Andre. The scene is getting tense, so much so that the system activates a mental defense skill for our boy to withstand the situation. Happy to oblige, Andre prepares to draw his sword to offer a boy a practical experience. But it's just what Zeke wanted. The instructor even lays out a condition for Zeke's victory. He will not only choose to ignore the boy's arrogant words, but also grant him permission to do whatever he wants in his class. The instructor even gives him a leeway, that he'll go easy and won't even use his aura on the cadet. But that's just playing right into Zeke's advantage even more. He's extremely confident in his ability to best Andre since he knows about the man's weakness. However, since his watchful brother is keeping an eye on him, Zeke doesn't want to risk gaining unnecessary attention like last time. So his battle strategy is to cut Andre's uniform just a bit before accepting defeat. The fight begins as Zeke launches an immediate swing against his teacher's neck. However, Andre deflects his strike even at that range, demonstrating the skills of a blue knight. The fight's going to be tough, and Zeke knows it. He bounces around and attacks from every direction, only to get deflected by his teacher's quick reaction time. The rest of the cadets are stumped to see the knight's brilliant ability to withstand Zeke's attacks for 30 minutes straight. Interestingly, Andre finds his blade quivering and his body slowly getting exhausted. He can't fathom how the boy is inexhaustibly performing without getting tired. Despite suppressing his powers greatly, the fight is starting to become difficult for him. This only goes to show just how brilliant the average pure-blood awakener of the Draker family is, to the point it is considered unfair to compare them. As for Zeke, he's capitalizing on Andre's shitty stamina against him. As for his aura, a typical Draker's aura cultivation is known for its uniqueness. It should be activated during training and all kinds of daily tasks, even sleeping. It should be indistinguishable from the basic need of breathing. So in this case, since Andre is so used to maintaining his aura, he's uncomfortable and unnaturally weak when suppressing it. That is the one factor helping Zeke get an edge against his instructor. Andre deflects the cadet's blade one more time, but Zeke hasn't given up. He doesn't want to lose like this. His ego demands that his opponent be forced into using aura. Zeke changes his strategy from creating openings to going for a different approach, an approach that will require Andre to use his aura no matter what. In other words, an extreme situation. He flips back to the ground, but only this time he darts ahead with incredible speed. It's the activation of the swift step skill. Andre finds himself overwhelmed by the cadet's lightning-fast movements. Attacking from his blind spot, Zeke activates critical strike as if to put everything in this one attack, while Andre is still left questioning how a cadet can deploy such an advanced skill. The second he turns to face Zeke, he puts the faintest amount of aura in his feet, allowing him to evade the attack in quick succession. Without waiting for another second, Andre activates Sky Slice and sends the cadet flying. It was a really powerful attack, so much so that it chips Zeke's sword and injures him enough for his healing factor to jump in. Despite his broken healing factor, he collapses in the arena, while Andre sheaths his sword and turns away frustrated. He officially announces that Zeke is exempt from the class and asks if there's anyone else like him who is willing to give him a try. Since they're all scared shitless from what happened to Zeke, they don't even dare to raise a voice against his fury. From then on, the class resumes for everyone except for our boy, who's chilling in the hospital bed and glazing at his performance against Andre just now. His original plan to cut his uniform was wasted, but instead, he made Andre use his aura, forcing him to acknowledge the kid's abilities. It's a good outcome as his teacher was humbled in the fight. That said, the final attack that Andre used was actually the most basic move of the dragon-slaying arts. The Sky Slice may be a basic technique, but it was massively amplified with the power of a blue knight, resulting in a monstrous output. Still, Zeke is glad that he was able to stand his own against a blue knight, and he's confident he's at that level thanks to his infinite stamina and healing. But those two things alone won't be enough for a life filled with freedom. He demands true freedom that could only come from overwhelming strength, the kind of power that would make him immune from the strength of his superiors. As he's busy in thought, a drunkard comes around to check on the boy, realizing that this is the youngest son of the Draker family. Our boy is startled seeing the dipshit's face because a drunkard is the last thing you'd expect in a medical ward. Not only was he unable to sense this guy's presence, he also mouthed pretty bad things about the patriarch of the Draker family. Zeke tries to inquire about his identity, but this drunkard is busy injecting himself with more booze. The man is really curious to ask the boy about his shocking regenerative abilities. After all, he just survived a serious internal wound in his body. The system assesses the situation and activates mental defense for him. Zeke refuses to budge because he knows for a fact that nobody is aware of his healing skill at the academy. He feigns ignorance, prompting the man to take serious measures as he attempts to attack the boy. Zeke dodges his palm strike, which is sharp enough to slice the bed. This makes him wonder if this guy is some sort of assassin. Zeke uses the bedsheet to blind the lunatic and senses extreme danger, so much so that he activates every last one of his skills for an all-out offense. Despite being blinded and unaware, the man easily catches the boy's blade and praises the boy's ability to adapt quickly. Zeke rushes backward anxiously and wonders what he means by mercenary. He assumes the mysterious guy might know something about his past. Seeing a Draker like Zeke throw away his sword and prioritize his life, the man believes he's better suited to become a mercenary instead of a knight. Our boy finally understands his words, and the feeling he gets from the mysterious guy makes his doubts certain. The power gap between them is so huge that the guy can easily kill Zeke if he's here for that. The protagonist assumes he's probably the same level as a red knight. The man points to his heavy claymore and believes he just picked it up from the basic supply. He wonders why Zeke, with such insane talents, is wasting his potential wielding a weapon like that. The protagonist becomes certain the man might be even stronger, but out of nowhere, Andre appears looking for the mysterious guy. He shocks Zeke and calls out the garden keeper, Dexter. Zeke finds it hard to believe, while Dexter questions how Andre managed to find him out. The knight remembers seeing Dexter at the training room earlier. He orders Zeke to get lost if his injuries are healed already, so our boy awkwardly tries to leave, but Dexter stops him and offers the kid to come to the academy's western greenhouse if he wants to learn something useful. Everyone goes silent for a second, but then Zeke arrogantly declines and leaves the room. Dexter becomes annoyed and feels nostalgic, as Zeke's father had the same arrogant attitude. Since Zeke's not a gullible kid anymore, he quickly catches up and believes if the gardener has the balls to mention Arthur, the patriarch's name, so casually, then he's definitely the person who only took Andre as a student in his entire life. Duke Draker, the Gale Knight. He's also one of the knights capable of using martial force. The crazy man went against a whole kingdom all by himself. The guy suddenly disappeared out of nowhere after becoming the talk of the town, so Zeke was not expecting him to be living a peaceful life at the academy like this. He guesses maybe Andre also came here because of Dexter. He wonders if Dexter got the Duke title because of his overwhelming tenacity or something like that. He recalls hearing a rumor that the crazy man even became a Black Knight just because he's obsessed with the color black. He finds it hard to believe, and even though he's sure the Duke is interested in him right now, Zeke doesn't care about it because he's not